Okay, all right. Okay, so the screen and the audio and everything is clear?
Yes, sir.
Great. So let's start off. Tell me the basic components of the limbic system. Array, what all is included in the limbic system? Anyone?
So essentially, the limbic lobe, certain nuclei and the connection. So it includes the hippocampus, parahippocampal gyrus, cingulate and insula. Then it includes amygdala and mammillary bodies. I'm forgetting some of the components. Then it will also include the mammillothalamic tract and the fornix.
Right, good. Anyone else wants to add anything or any comments or anything at all? Okay, so the easiest mnemonic to remember, the four main components or the four most essential components of the limbic system is hippohat. Hippo is hippocampus. What would be the H in hat? Okay, clear so far. Now these are essentially the main components of your limbic system, that is the hippocampus, hypothalamus, amygdala and thalamus. Now you can say that the parahippocampal gyrus, the hippocampal formation, mammillary body is essentially again a component or the what do you say, the posterior most end of your hypothalamus, the anterior thalamic nuclei, the subcallosal nucleus, the cingulate gyrus. These are all, different books will tell you different things, but essentially the limbic system by and large, which deals with memory, there are three main components of the limbic system, right? One is the autonomic nervous system. The second is your memory. And the third is your emotion. So these are essentially the three main components for which the limbic system is called the limbic system, and it will essentially have these things, right? Now, is everyone clear with the location and the concept and And where all do you find all these things, or you want me to go into a bit more detail about this? Because for people who know, this might sound a bit more repetitive, but then you do need to have a visualization of all these areas of your brain very clearly. Only then you'll be able to see what is, the Papez circuit, and what kind of connections you essentially have. So do you want me to help you visualize those areas of the brain, or do you think you're all right with that? I can't see the chat box, so just give me your comments verbally.
So people have written in the chat box that it's okay, we have the basic concept. I personally feel we can do a quick revisit to like just quick visualization of these things. But again, whatever everyone wants. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll show you the app that I use, and I recommend you get that app for it. It it's a really good app to specifically for people like us who are into neurobiology. So I'll show you this structure first, okay? And then I can show you other sections. So this is our central gyrus, right? Precentral, post-central, central sulcus, sorry, precentral, post-central gyrus. This will be your temporal, frontal. All right, these are your basics. Should I dissect this out? As soon as you go in, can someone tell me what this structure is, which you can see right now? This one. Am I audible?
Is it basal ganglia?
Right. The basal ganglia consists of three things. What are those three things?
Caudate, putamen, and
Globus pallidus.
Globus pallidus.
Right. And what is this one?
That big thing is caudate.
This is the putamen. The caudate essentially is like a tail. That's why it is called caudate. So the above one is your caudate. This one is your putamen. And as you go in, this one right here is your thalamus. And this one is your globus pallidus externus. And this one is your internus. I'll dissect them for you, but just go through and visualize this thing. It is very essential to have this in your visual memory. Then you will be able to form your concepts around it. Only if you have your concepts very, very clear, then you'll be able to see and visualize neuroanatomy. That's why I strongly tell you to spend some more time behind the basics. The rest of the tracks and everything will be easier if you know your basics well. All right. This thing essentially is your lateral ventricle. I'm dissecting this layer by layer. So I'm getting rid of the lateral ventricle. All right. Now, this thing is your thalamus of your right side, right? And you obviously have a lot of different nuclei in your thalamus, for which I'll give you a mnemonic as well, so that you can memorize it. But these are essentially the thalamic nuclei that you have. Get rid of them as well. Now you essentially have one hemisection, right? Of this entire part of your brain. This being your third ventricle, it is very essential to see that your hypothalamus essentially surrounds your third ventricle. This is your optic chiasma. I hope these things are visible, right?
Yes, sir.
I'll go zoom a bit into it. This is essentially your optic chiasma. You can see on the top right corner, right? The labelings.
Yes.
This is your stalk, the infundibular stalk. This is your pituitary. And this essentially is your hypothalamus. All right. I'll again dissect this ventricle so that you can see it a bit more clearly. All right. So this is your hypothalamus, this is your thalamus, and lateral to your thalamus, your basal ganglia. First, you'll see your globus pallidus, then your putamen, your caudate. All right. This is your corpus callosum. And now here, when I dissect the lateral ventricle, you'll be able to see this is your hippocampus, right? So what is this tract? What is this? If I click it, then it show the answer. But can someone tell me what is this one? Just behind hippocampus. This is your fornix. All right. And what does the fornix connect? What two structures does the fornix connect?
Mammillary body and this hippocampus.
Right. Right. So hippocampus is the way you understand very simply what the hippocampus is that right. So the hippocampus, what it will do is essentially it will convert your short-term memory into long-term memory. And I'm really simplifying things right now. That's but to get your 101 concepts very clear, this is what you need to remember and memorize. Is that when your short-term memory or your working memory, the way you think of it is think of your phone. Your phone has a RAM and it has a ROM. It has say 4, 6, or 8 GB of RAM. So that is essentially your working memory. And the total amount of storage that your phone has is about say 64 GB or 128 GB. So to convert that from your working memory to your long-term memory, that is something which your hippocampus does. And the hippocampus is classically damaged in which disease? Okay, with me so far?
Yes.
All right. Now I'll give you a mnemonic to remember the Papez circuit, and then I'll give you the mnemonics to remember the nuclei of your thalamus and hypothalamus. But before that, just let me get to one more interesting thing, because the other things, essentially, there are some things that you just need to put in your rote memory. The amygdala, what does the amygdala do?
It's important for
Emotions.
Where is the amygdala? Can you see the amygdala anywhere here? Is it visible? All right. Is it visible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, what does this very, very small area do? What is the function of this area? Anyone?
Emotions.
Emotions
It's
is
the
still a
fear
gross.
center.
Yeah,
It's the
fear.
fear center.
Fear. And one more thing.
Emotional memory.
Anxiety. So yeah, the emotional memory part, what essentially happens is when the way the memories function is, you have something in your working memory, then it gets converted into your long-term memory. And when you get certain cues, classically, a lot of PTSD patients, when they hear a loud noise, they get triggered. So this triggering phenomenon that happens specifically in situations which are related to fear and anxiety are essentially modulated by your amygdala. So amygdala is the part of the body or the part of the brain which is essentially responsible for fear, anger, and anxiety. Hyperactivation of these centers will lead to will essentially have a neurobiological basis which is centered around your amygdala. Now, can anyone tell me a classic symptom which is associated with amygdala?
Syndrome, Clover-Bucy syndrome.
Yeah, and what are the symptoms of Kluver-Bucy?
Docility, hyperorality, um, hypersexuality.
Mm.
Hyperphagia.
Hmm.
There's some visual symptom as well, I think. Visual agnosia or something.
So for all those who didn't know what Kluver-Bucy is, just put it in your rote memory, because this is a bread and butter question for your post-graduation. You need to know what Kluver-Bucy is and what are the classical symptoms of Kluver-Bucy. All right. But what essentially happens is that it is associated with amygdala, and problems with the amygdala will cause you your Kluver-Bucy syndrome, which will have these features. And the Royal College essentially does ask, so which one of the following is not a symptom of Kluver-Bucy syndrome? So make sure that you know it from the tip of your tongue. All right. Now, what lobe is the amygdala part of?
Medial temporal.
Yeah, medial temporal. What other structures does the medial temporal lobe have?
Hippocampus.
Mm-hmm.
Planum temporale.
Yeah, so your planum temporale, your hippocampus, your parahippocampal structures will all be parts of the medial temporal lobe. And it is very important that you mention planum temporale or temporale or whatever you call it. What is the function of that structure?
Is it secondary auditory cortex? And ratio reversed in schizophrenia. That's what I remember.
So this structure is essentially, normally it is asymmetrical, and for the people who are left dominant, the planum temporal is more developed in the left side of the brain, rather, or the left hemisphere rather than the right hemisphere. But this asymmetry, which is physiological and normal in nature, gets reversed in patients who suffer from schizophrenia, and that leads to the auditory hallucinations, is one of the theories. So this is again a very classic question for the Royal College to be asked in paper A. So which one of the following is a abnormality found in schizophrenia, or something like that, they'll ask. All right, with me so far? Then we'll move to the a bit boring part, but I've tried to add mnemonics to it. With me so far? Is that all right so far? Any doubts? Okay. So when you want to memorize your Papez circuit, I recommend you write this down with me so that you remember. Write this much. All right. Now, what are these things? What are the full forms of this thing? M is essentially your mammillary body. All right. AT is essentially your anterior thalamic nucleus. C is your cingulate gyrus. And H is your hippocampus. All right. So the hippocampus will be connected to the mammillary body through, what is the structure called?
Fornix.
Fornix. All right. What is the mammillary body to the anterior thalamic nucleus tract called?
Amylothalamic tract.
Good. What is the anterior thalamic nucleus to cingulate gyrus tract called?
Internal capsule?
Thalamocortical tract.
Okay.
All right. And what is the cingulate gyrus to hippocampus tract called? It is essentially called the cingulum. It isn't really asked very commonly, so you need not memorize it, but it does not essentially go to the hippocampus directly. Where it goes is, it goes to the parahippocampal gyrus and it goes to the entorhinal cortex. All right. And what is the function of this entire circuit? The episodic memory and space mapping. All right. Any doubts so far? Any doubts so far? Has everyone gone to sleep or what?
So this cingulum, you said it goes to parahippocampus essentially, right? So like, does it go via parahippocampus or just it doesn't go to hippocampus directly? Which one is it? I'm a little confused.
So that's why it's very essential to see this. The hippocampus and the parahippocampal gyrus themselves are physically connected. These are essentially parts of the brain that we have, differentiated for our simplification. But otherwise, the hippocampus parahippocampal formation is essentially something which is very closely interconnected. You're able to see? Is that all right?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So another boring and thing that you need to remember is the thalamic nuclei and your hypothalamic nuclei. So thalamic nuclei, remember this thing. The way I remembered it is vain people are sensitive. All right. VPS or vain people are sensitive. So VP essentially will divide into VPL and VPM. That is ventro-posterolateral nucleus and ventro-posteromedial nucleus. L, remember, is for limbs. And M, essentially, I remembered, is for mouth or face. All right. Also responsible for taste. Okay. And remember that the VA and VL, that is ventro-anterior and ventrolateral. Now, remember the words, the letters A and L, and remember accelerator. Where do you find an accelerator? In a motor. So these are very silly, but I know, but you need something or some mnemonics to remember all these things. So the VPL, VPM, or the VP is essentially your sensory nuclei, and VA and VL are your motor nuclei. All right. Then the lateral geniculate body is responsible for anyone?
Visual pathway, L for look.
Yeah. And your medial geniculate for?
Auditory.
Music, listening.
Auditory. Good. All right. Now moving on to the hypothalamic nuclei. The lateral one, remember, lateral is responsible for let's eat. So it is responsible for hunger. And what is the neurotransmitter associated with hunger?
Ghrelin.
Ghrelin. And your ventromedial is responsible for satiety. And what is the neurotransmitter associated with satiety?
Lexin. No, leptin. Okay.
Right? Similarly, the anterior nuclei will be responsible for the parasympathetic pathway or cooling. Posterior for heating. Sympathetic. Mammillary, we know, is for memory. Right? Suprachiasmatic for anyone?
Circadian rhythm.
Yeah. Supraoptic for
ADH.
good. Paraventricular for
Oxytocin.
right. All right. So these are essentially your nuclei for your hypothalamus and your thalamus. Any doubts or anything in your basics, very basics of your limbic system? Don't feel awkward if you feel your doubt has doubt sounds silly or anything.
5.5 glasses of water पी लिया है मम्मा आपको
Pretty sure
पता है मैंने
that,
कितने glasses water पिए हैं बताऊं क्या
क्या बेटा
5.5 glasses of water I drank till now.
very good.
all right. Any doubts at all in any of these things? Now I'm happy to go into as much detail regarding the hypothalamus and these parts as you need, but I don't think they are very essential for your MRC psych. If you guys want me to go into more detail, I'll be happy to schedule another session specifically for the hypothalamus. I've studied a bit more into all the parts. I'll just give you an overview of the hypothalamus. So essentially, this being your brainstem, your hypothalamus will be essentially divided into three parts. This is just an orientation: the infundibulum, the pituitary, your ventricle, and the hypothalamus would surround it. Behind it would be your habenular nucleus, right? And this is essentially what, if you're interested, you can go into a bit more detail with regarding the hypothalamus. It has 4 parts: the preoptic, the supraoptic, the tuberal, and the mammillary. And then there are all these nuclei, which you can visualize like this: the anterior nucleus, the cooling one, the suprachiasmatic responsible for circadian rhythm, the paraventricular for oxytocin. Your ADH and your oxytocin are being stored here, right? These are essentially the pathways of your hippocampus, all the different connections. Like I said, not essential for your MRC psych, but I'm happy to go into more details if you want to. We have less than a minute. I hope this session was helpful. I'll schedule another one as soon as possible, but I'm running out of these free 40 minutes and I don't have a paid version of Zoom. So thank you guys. Feel free to message me if you have any doubts for the next session as well.
We can rejoin if you want to schedule it now. We can rejoin using the same link.
It's already 10:40 in India, and I don't think people would have the stamina to study this hypothalamus and all such late in the night. But let's schedule one next week. I was a bit occupied with my cask results and everything. I hope to have more frequent sessions. Also planning to make short videos like the one that I made about hyperprolactinemia. So hopefully I'll be a bit more active, but just keep sending me your feedback. Keep sending me what kind of videos and topics do you guys want, so that I can focus on them. I need you guys to be more interactive. Only 1 or 2 people participating will not really help your cause and will not help me understand what is it that you want to study as well, right? So feel free to reach out, feel free to ask any doubts that you have, and I'll schedule the next session pretty soon, I hope. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.